Okay, let's do another test. Can you guys hear me without echo? Okay, well, I guess we'll start back from the top of the key. Um, um, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to today's live stream. As I said before, my name's Kurt. I'm a contract animator currently responsible for the lead character animation tasks for the upcoming game Delver's Drop by Pixelscopic. Today I'm going to be going through and showing all of you how we over here at Pixelscopic are utilizing Esoteric's animation software Spine to bring our Delvers to life in the game. Due to the fact this is going to be kind of a semi-technical overview of our animation process, I'd like to ask everyone if they could just to hold most of the bigger questions for the question and answer portion at the end of the live stream. So I guess without any further ado, we'll hop into the basics of how we're doing this. So in Spine, there are two primary phases of the software. You have the setup mode, and you'll notice it up here in the upper corner. And if you click that, you also have your animate phase. We're going to start out in setup because that's kind of how the whole process begins. For us, with Delver's Drop in particular, we had to deal with a lot of issues regarding multi-direction characters and being able to do different things with different parts of the anatomy of the characters in the animation process. So how we addressed that was creating 4 separate skeletal structures for each of the characters. If you go over here to the right-hand portion where my cursor is, you'll notice that there are the arm primary, arm secondary, body, and then you also have head skeletons. Of these, you also have 8 of each. Each one of these constitutes the primary direction that in-game you would select using your joystick for your character to turn directions. I'll show you a little bit more of that later on when we get into it. So for us, we also had, inside each one of these directions, we also have to have, load all the assets and get them associated. For more information on like how to load all of this stuff and go into more detail on how we fuse assets to a bone and how we make that interrelate, I would recommend going over to Esoteric's website. They have a great forum over there and a huge community that's helping everyone, to get some good tutorialized information for setting that up. So what we'll do is we'll kind of turn our eyes over here at the Gladiator head as the character that we have pulled up. And to give you an idea of kind of how the skeletal structure operates, I have the bones pulled up in here, and you can highlight them individually. And they're named. It might be a little hard to see on your guys' screen, but the one I currently have selected is helmet. But when we go back, there's a whole tree here in a hierarchy of how our skeleton is structured. It starts with a root bone, and we use the root on every single one of our skeletons, and that is kind of the point by which we fuse them programmatically on Kobe's end, so that way, the arm, head, body can all fuse together and operate properly in game. Inside of that, for a particular bone like the head bone, we have now our assets or images. And you'll notice as I run the cursor over them, it'll show you all the different images that we have associated with this particular bone to create the head. And additionally, we have for the gladiator, we'll have the head bone, we have the helmet, we have the 3 horns that are on their head, horn primary, rear, and secondary, and then the scarf bone. And all of those have those images tethered to them, so that way we can independently animate and control them, so that way the character has good fluid motion. So now that we've kind of covered, how we set that up and the basics of the skeleton, we'll go ahead and move over into the animation phase, portion of the software. And as you'll see over here, when I close this down, I'll go over to the animations, and here are some of the animations loaded up. Currently right now what you're seeing is the idle state. And just to give you an idea what it looks like. And it's lagging a tad, so I'll see if I can speed that up. But the general idea is you see the head leaning up, he's taking in a breath, eye will blink, and that is kind of our general idle state. Now to go into a little bit more detail on, kind of how the state will operate, I can select an individual bone like the head bone, And if you see in here down in the lower panel in the animation pane, we have all these keyframes for individual portions of what I'm controlling for that particular bone. Over here you have, if you notice in the left-hand column, it'll describe what it is. The red ones are scale keyframes. The blue ones are translate, which is how I kind of you animate the XY portion of it, and then rotation obviously deals with the rotation of the head. And then down here, this whole section is going to cover and control how I image swap or turn on and off the transparency or opacity of the individual assets, the images that are associated with that particular bone. Now what I'll do is I'm going to actually open up a different character, because currently we're looking at the gladiator, but I would like to open up the rogue for a second, so that way you guys can kind of see in more detail how some of this image swapping and animation state operates. So bear with me one moment while I pull that up. Okay, so now we have the rogue pulled up, and I'm going to shut off viewing the bones for a second so we can kind of just see the character. And what I'm going to go through and show is our basic attack sequence off of our 180-degree direction, which is the front-facing direction for the players. And I'm going to kind of give you an idea of how all these skeletons interrelate on an animation sequence. For attack sequences, we usually have 4 primary stages. We have the attack 1, which is the wind-up, attack 2, which is a charge, attack 3 is the execute phase, and attack 4 is the retract. And when I go through and show you guys these, you'll kind of get a better idea of why they're named that way and what their actual object is. So I'll start up here at the primary arm, and I'm going to select the wind-up generic, which will just be our wind-up phase. And I do that for every single skeleton as I sort through. And I'll highlight the, no, we'll not do that for the moment. And what you'll see is the character pulls back, and let me shut off the repeat, as the character winds up back into their attack position, giving you an idea of, okay, I'm getting ready to fight. Now we go into the charge phase, where I'll go through and select all of these again. So we go down through charge and select that for every state. Obviously, in-game, it's not as cumbersome as this because Kobe makes all the magic happen programmatically. Oh, okay. Another thing to bear in mind, you'll notice that some of the layers, like the arms and stuff like that, are disappearing underneath another layer because currently skeletons, I don't have control over how they sort inside spine. So when I'm viewing it, you kind of have to use your imagination to some degree. Skeleton drawer. Huh. Well, I will have to address that in a moment. But so as we're going through, here's the charge phase. And I'll actually put that one on loop so everyone can see it. Let me make sure I have this correct. And that'll be kind of what the character looks like while they're in their charge phase, building up, waiting for an attack. And then the next phase is the execute. And for this one, we're going to be doing slash. So let me make sure I get all that pulled up. And here's when the character actually goes through that motion. And then the final part for it is the retract, which brings the character back into the idle state. And I'll kind of show that portion with the bones turned back on so you can kind of get an idea of how all the bones are meshing across. Okay, so I'll just kind of select the weapon bone so you get an idea of what it looks like when it's moving across. And that's when it returns back to idle from the end of the execute. So all these are played back to back to each other, so that way it's one fluid motion. So, you know, they'll draw back, they'll charge, kind of swinging the weapon around, waving it in a menacing manner, and then you execute, sword comes across, attacks, you know, opposition, and then it pulls back to reset, so that way you can actually, you know, perform your next attack or whatever motion you may be doing. So that's kind of the basic of how an attack sequence would operate. Another thing that we do a lot of in this is image swapping. And a good example for that will be, and it's kind of like a faux version of frame-by-frame animation, to give you an idea of when it's kind of hard to do a big rotation. And hold on one second, let me make sure this is correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull up the body, and we'll take a look at that one, the body skeleton, and I'll show you guys what switching out all of those different images would look like in game. So I'll go over and select the torso, and if you notice over here there are a bunch of images associated with it. I'll wait for the cursor to kind of pull them up. And okay, so down here in the animation pane, when I pull up the 360 spin, and for some reason we're now losing all of those. Well, that's problematic. Okay, give me one second. I'll show it to you guys with the secondary arm utilizing a shield instead. And we have execute 360. Okay, so you have the shield here, and as it changes and rotates around the character, we do an image swap. You'll notice it right here in these keyframes. It starts out facing you, cuts to one angle, cuts to another angle here, and then for the rest of the animation it rotates around. When we're doing like the full 360 spin for the body and head, you'll swap between all 8 directions as the character rotates around. And how I set that up is we basically put the opacity at 100% and then the very next frame at 0% and set it to a stepped, and you can see that over here, the curve type set to step, so it's just either on or it's off. So that way when we're animating across, you get this look of this kind of fluid frame by frame effect. And that's how we handle doing multi-image swap, and we can do this kind of on the big scale, lots and lots of images. And you can get away with a lot of fluid motion that way that would otherwise be a little cumbersome trying to handle it just with bone deformation or something of that nature. Now kind of to bring that all together so you guys can see all of this, you know, in game, to kind of give you an idea how quickly they all come back to back. Obviously, I assume a lot of you have played. For those of you who haven't, I'm going to pull the game up real quick just to give it. And I'm zooming in so we can get a little better idea what it looks like. So we'll go through and kind of show you. There's the shield being pulled up. There's as it pulls back. And we're going to be doing an overhand attack with this particular mace and the gladiator. And this is where you go into your defend state, where you can actually protect your character from attack. And we also have a shield dash. Close, we'll do it from the side. And let me back up a little bit for you. This is a defensive rebound where you back away and gain distance and still defend yourself. And then you have your attacks happening in multiple directions. So that's kind of how all those skeletons come together, is it allows you to rotate, control the arms independently. Kobe handles that obviously programmatically. And we're able to get all of those different states that you saw to play together in kind of a nice fluid gameplay. So that's kind of our animation process in a nutshell. I mean, in a very kind of skinny version. At this point, I kind of open it up to you guys for any questions and questions you might have about how we do this. And Baker, Kobe, and I will do our best to give you reasonable answers. Okay. While we're waiting, I guess I can actually pull up just a run cycle real quick for everyone so they can kind of get an idea of, this was one where, we had to deal with feet moving a lot, making the body move up and down. It's getting the gait down for a character can be a little complicated at times. So I'll go ahead and pull that one up real quick. Okay, one of the questions that just came up was, on average, on an average animation, how many images are normally used? And in this case, I don't mean the whole body. I mean, say, an arm swinging the sword or an arm holding a shield. Because those are two separate skeletons, they're going to be utilizing a different number of images. For the what we call the primary arm, which is the weapon arm, the one that's doing the attack actually with. Off the top of my head, you can potentially have, because the shoulder cap will actually change images, and I guess it'll be better to just kind of scroll up and show you instead of, while talking about it. That one can have probably, I would say, this will be a good way of showing it. You've got the hand over here, so we have 1, 2, 3 images for that particular direction. We usually have the image right here, so it'll say shoulder 180, which matches the direction of, the primary direction of that state, which is 180 degrees. Then you have the 225, which means, you're adding 45 additional degrees to it for like when the character turns its shoulder towards you in an attack phase. Then you have the shoulder extended, and the shoulder extended is used when we're doing like a swinging attack or something where the arm's at full extension. And I guess the best way to kind of show you that would be, here. So you notice over here, and I'll kind of turn, when it's in full extension, the glove actually changes, so does the shoulder cap. So if I switch back to like wind up or something like that, you notice it's different images as well. So I'd say for the primary arm, you're going to look at 3 shoulder caps, 3 gloves, and a single arm image, which is just kind of if you see over here, it's kind of just a black tube that allows me to extend the, create distance between the glove and the shoulder. You don't see it much in game. It's just a way to kind of fill the gap, so it's not, this empty dead space with a hand floating around. For the secondary arm, which is the one that uses the shield, there can actually be, again, you're going to have the shield as well. And usually, again, with that one, I want to say it's 3 shields, 3 gloves. Yeah, so we got 3 shields. So you have the primary direction of 180, then you have minus 45 degrees, plus 45 degrees, and that happens again with the hand and shoulder. So that's how that's the general use for that one. And so you'll all together, let's see, 3, 9, 10 images. So for a secondary arm. When you start getting into like the body and the head, it starts getting significantly more images. To give you an idea, like there's the torso with all the different images. You have all the different feet for the secondary foot, all the different feet for the primary foot. Then you have for the rogue, because it's wearing a cloak, it's actually broken into two halves. So that way we can kind of independently control, the way it flaps while the character moves. So with that, we have again 3, which goes on the positive 45 and the negative 45. So yeah, you can start getting into quite a few images. If you look over here, like when I scan down all of these from here to here are going to be images just associated with that particular skeleton. So if that kind of gives you an idea.
There's a question from Nipstein, which is one of the esoteric guys.
Okay, the next question I see is Nipstein, and is there a reason why you don't use multiple images on the same slot and key the visibility on them instead of having multiple slots in draw order? Originally, when we were first, kind of troubleshooting that, this was when we had one of the early versions of Spine. We were kind of running into difficulty in game. It had a tendency of when we'd swap skeletons or directions, we'd all of a sudden have image visibility ghosting that would hang around, and all of a sudden you'd have like multiple images stacking at once. Again, I'm not sure if that functionality, I'm assuming, has been corrected, but because we were this far down the production pipeline, we kind of stuck with the legacy solution that we picked at the time, which was, oh goodness, early this year, probably in the spring of this year. So that would be the particular reason. I have animated draw order for the pipe on the sorcerer when that did come online, but so much animation had been done up until that point, it just kind of became we'd have to go back and redo so much work, and there just isn't time to do that at this point down the production line.
Could you actually load up the sorcerer maybe and show them how the pipe and face animate? Because that's one of the more kind of fun ones.
Okay. Baker just asked me to load up the sorcerer so you guys can kind of see some of that functionality that we just discussed. And this is a fairly detailed face, so bear with me one moment while I load that up. Okay, so we'll just focus on the head for the moment.
And you might also zoom in a little bit so there's bigger, the sorcerer himself is bigger on the screen. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go over to the animation state idle. This one's a fairly basic animation, just him at rest. But if you notice, you'll have the mustache tilting, the beard tilting, and they're all handled by separate bones. You have the beard bone, mustache, pipe, and you've got the primary head bone that everything's kind of parented off to. So if I move the head, you don't have a mustache hanging around in one way. And then we have the hat, which allows us to, if we want to do anything like make it flutter up and down, we have the ability to do that. So that's kind of the general idle state. I'll just play that through real quick so people can see it. And also, we turn the eyes on and off so that way you can have a blink effect for the character. And for the image swapping portion of it, where we're handling draw order, let me pull up a state if I can remember it correctly. Maybe it was on wind up. And it's actually probably on a different direction that I did that with, because some of them on the 3/4 angles when probably the 135 or 225, the pipe, when we were sorting through images, sometimes it wouldn't play nice with the animation I was trying to do, so I'd do an a draw order adjustment, but let me double check if we've got that in this angle. Okay, not that one. Let's try this one. Yeah, I think this one has a draw order animation to it. Well, maybe I lied on that. As I said, it's been a while, and a lot of that stuff, when we were first building it, didn't have, well, we weren't getting that functionality to work quite properly, so we wound up having to, XNA that and just utilize image swapping via transparency changes on keys. But this will give you an idea of kind of how the head can move so independently in all the different parts, utilizing all the different bones and asset alignment. Do we have additional questions? And I mean, anything you guys might want to see on a particular character? Okay, I guess Ryan asked me to show you guys one more thing, and that is kind of the difference between some of our different attack states. So we'll kind of isolate the primary arm, seeing as that's, kind of mostly where the magic happens. And I'll show you guys some of the different animation states for that, or some of the different executes as we call them in our phase. So we have the overhand attack, and I'll kind of back up a little bit and select the weapon bone. Let me shut that off. And let me back up just a tad so you guys can see that. For this one, if you'll notice, it kind of has a slow build up and then it snaps forward real fast. In game, when we actually use separate skeletons also for the weapons, and that's so that way we can support picking up multiple weapons, whether it's maces, hammers, axes, swords, firearms, things like that. So we don't actually address that inside of the character file. We handle that in a completely separate skeleton. So that's what the overhand attack looks like. That's primarily used with hammers. And then we go over to just the execute slash, which is one that I think most people who've been playing any of the builds are familiar with, on the rogue especially. It is the standard attack. And as you can tell, it just sweeps across. Then we have the thrust, and this one will be used with spears, and it starts drawn back and then just pushes forward straight to the front direction of the primary facing direction of the character's head at that direction. And in this one, it's 180, so it points straight down. Then we have our, let's see, I'll open up the rogue real quick and show you guys some of the other ones, like the 360 spin. We also have the arc on that one, and shoot, which have not been entirely implemented with some of the other characters just yet. Okay, so here's the execute for the 360 spin. I'll select the weapon bone. And this is for when the character just does this kind of twirl while the weapon whips around them, basically colliding with everything that surrounds the character. Then we have arc, which starts out with a very small bone and extends out to its full. And this is a kind of a a primary attack that was in the very original Prime builds, or the PAX builds, when we were showing the original version of the Rogue when it was fighting. And it's kind of just this quick whip around and attack, a very, shallow arcing attack. And then here is Shoot. And this one's going to be a little different from most everything else, and it's actually still being fine-tuned right now. It is not finalized. At the attack 3 execute portion of it, you start with the gun fully extended, and then it just blows back from recoil. And that one is still being ironed out. But that gives you kind of a taste for the potpourri of attacks that we'll actually be having for these characters. And there's still more to come as we continue testing them and getting them implemented in the game.
One of the forum regulars was asking us about how we do particle effects, and I kind of answered it since it's mostly separate, but do you know of any particle effects that we could show?
Steam pipes are spine.
Oh, yeah, you did those, right?
Yeah. Someone was asking if we could kind of showcase like a particle effect that we actually animated through Spine, because not all particles that we actually handle through Spine, but one in particular has come up, and that is our steam vents. So give me 1 second and I'll load that up. You'll have to excuse me for 1 second as I track that one down. It's been a while. Okay, what we're actually going to load up is the enemy death explode, and images aren't loading. Yeah, the computer we're using for this stream is not one I typically work off of, so some of the things are not linking properly. Sadness. Yeah, I guess to kind of explain how and we'll have to all use our imaginations for a moment. What we're in Baker's currently trying to find that real quick, the assets to connect it. How we handle some of the particle animation work through Spine is, if you notice over here, we'll have a bunch of bones, and what we'll do, and sometimes it'll be a bunch of bones, or it'll be maybe 1 or 2 bones that have a sequence of images that we've kind of drawn frame by frame in Photoshop or Illustrator. We bring them in, and we connect them to the particular bone that we're going to be animating with, and we'll turn them on in sequence. So it's again kind of a faux frame by frame animation, and then a lot of times we'll duplicate that bone several times, so that way you get several permutations of that, and that way it gives it some variety, so it doesn't look like just one looping cycle of a sprite or a particular particle. And we can also further control the transparency, color shifting, size, scale, rotation inside of Spine, which allows us to further, get away with stretching just a few images that we've created during our art asset production portion of the pipeline, and get it into game and give it enough variety, so that way everything doesn't look so repetitious while in game.
I think you just change the air path to be on the.
Okay, I'm also going to be, real quick, I think they found the path for me. I'm going to be resetting the path for the images, so that way we can actually see have everyone be able to take a look at this particular animation.
Maybe you have to do it on individual images. I can't remember. I figured you would be a pro on this one. Oh, there you go. The red button. There it is on the right.
Okay, there we go. So we'll go through and pull up one of the animation state and just kind of give it a run through. And if you go slow, you'll see all the different images that are being utilized. It kind of starts out as, a bit of a mass at the bottom, kind of light and bright, and it darkens up, and as it rises, it slowly just starts to kind of get thinner and thinner and thinner. And that's, using several images, but also with spine allowing us to move the individual bone and the image that is associated with it and adjust its transparency. I'll set it up to play back for everyone, and they'll kind of get an idea of what it looks like. I'll slow it down real quick because it's going crazy fast. And maybe we'll just slow it down even more. So that gives you an idea of what an example of a particle animation through spine would look like and how we'd address that.
How we do these grayscales so we can tint them in the game and scale them and all that.
And the reason why it's actually what you're seeing is in grayscale is so that way we can actually control that in-game through color correction. And it's easier to do color correction if we're dealing in grayscale than if we already had a pre-colorized image. So that's why you guys see it the way it currently is. Do we have any additional questions?
Might close mine first. So
What I'm going to do real quick for you guys is I'm actually going to go through and play the game for just a minute. I'm going to shut down Spine so that way we don't have too much lag in game while we're playing. Hold on one second. At the moment, we actually don't have any animations for the Beastkeeper yet. We are going to have quite a few characters coming on soon that we will be adding in. Obviously, we have to wait till they're drawn and painted, and then I got to cut them up and then import them into Spine and do all the associations there. It takes about a week per character on the animation end, and usually about a week coloring and drawing, give or take. So it's about every 2 weeks we can crank out a character when we're doing production on characters. I apologize for poor gameplay, but it is what it is. And I died. So we'll pull up another character real quick and run it through. Yeah, right now we're just kind of plinking around, and normally when I'm not live streaming like this, there's not as much lag in the game, so it actually can be a little quicker and snappier for sure. And I'll probably die shortly on this character, and we'll get the gladiator. And this is probably the room I'll die. And dead. Okay, well, it seems like we're about ready to wrap things up. I just wanted to thank everyone again for tuning into the live stream covering animation. Again, if you guys have any further questions about, how to animate with Spine, obviously go over to Esoteric's website. They have a ton of information. They're extremely helpful. And again, if you guys are interested in pre-order, please go over to our website at www.delversdrop.com and /pre-order. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next live stream.